My in-laws used a 1998 handwritten note to steal my properties, forgetting my name had been legally on them since 2003. My name is Anna Hollis. I am 57 years old. I have been married to Daniel for 23 years, and I have been the co-owner of 4 rental properties in Knoxville, Tennessee, since the spring of 2003. The deeds were recorded the same week we came back from our honeymoon. Daniel and his father drove to the county clerk's office together. I signed the paperwork at our kitchen table the night before, in blue ink, with Daniel holding my left hand and reading every line out loud. That story used to be a sweet one. It used to be the story I told when people asked how Daniel and I started our life. A husband who put his new wife on the family rentals before the wedding, rice was out of her hair. A father-in-law who handed me the deed copies in a brown envelope at our reception and said, "Welcome home, Anna." A mother-in-law who hugged me at the punch bowl and said she had always wanted a daughter. It is a different story now. It is the story of how those same people, 20 years later, tried to undo what their own hands had signed. And it is the story of a piece of paper from 1998 that they kept in a den drawer for a quarter of a century, waiting for a moment they thought I would be too afraid to fight. I want to tell you how it started, not the petition. The petition was the last thing. I want to tell you how it really started, because if you have ever lived with a mother-in-law who slowly, carefully, over years, rewrites the room you are sitting in, you already know. The petition is never the beginning. The petition is the moment they finally believe they can win. The first time I noticed something was wrong, I was sitting in Patricia's living room in the fall of 2021. She was passing around a tray of those little pecan tarts she always made when she wanted everyone in a good mood. She was talking about the Lakeside Drive duplex, which is one of our 4 rentals, and she said something I had heard her say a dozen times that month without paying attention. Robert's properties, she said. Robert's tenants. Robert's headache, really. He never could say no to a leaky faucet. I was sitting 6 feet from her. My name has been on the Lakeside Drive deed since 2003. I have written the property tax check on that duplex for 16 years out of an account that has my name first on the signature card. And she was saying, "Robert's properties," with my coffee cup in her hand. I did not correct her at the time. That was the first boundary she treated like a suggestion. I should have. I want to tell you I should have. But Daniel was sitting on the couch next to his father, laughing at something on the television, and his shoulders were down in a way they almost never are when he is in that house. And I did the thing women like me do, the thing I do not entirely forgive myself for, even now. I let her talk. I told myself it was a habit. I told myself it was a generation. I told myself she had been Robert's wife for 40 years, and the language had just calcified around her. But I noticed. I noticed the next Sunday, when she did it again. I noticed at Easter, when she walked our oldest niece around the back deck of the Holston Avenue rental and pointed out the new gutters and said, "Your grandfather had these put in last year." Robert had not put them in. I had hired the contractor. I had paid the invoice from our joint operating account. I had walked the property with the gutter man on a Tuesday in April while Robert was at the dentist. I noticed every single time, and I did not say a word. There was one Sunday in particular, around Thanksgiving of 2021, that I have thought about more times than I want to admit. Patricia had set the table for 9. Our 2 grown daughters were home. Daniel's sister Caroline was there with her husband and their boys. Robert was at the head of the table carving the turkey, doing the slow ceremonial thing he does with the electric knife. Patricia stood at the side counter and lifted her glass. "To Robert," she said, "who has worked so hard to keep something for this family, the properties he built, the home he provided, the legacy he is leaving to his son and his grandsons." She did not look at me. She did not look at our daughters. She looked at Daniel, and then she looked at our nephews, who were 9 and 11, and shoveling cranberry sauce off their plates and not paying attention. Caroline raised her glass without thinking. Daniel raised his slowly. I raised mine because I had been raised to raise my glass at the table of the woman who fed me, and because if I had not raised it, Patricia would have had a story to tell about the toast Anna refused at Thanksgiving for the next 10 years. I took one sip of water. I set the glass down. I asked Caroline to pass the rolls. Nobody else in that room heard the sentence I had just heard. They had heard a kind toast from a proud wife. I had heard a property deed being read aloud in front of 9 people with one name on it. That was the day I started writing things down, not in the bookkeeping ledgers, in a small spiral notebook I kept in the bottom drawer of my desk. I wrote the date. I wrote the toast. I wrote the names of everyone who had been at the table. I did not know yet why I was writing it. I just knew it was the kind of sentence you do not get back if you do not save it the day you hear it. I want to be honest with you about why. It was not because I was weak. I do not think I am weak. I run a small bookkeeping practice out of our home office. I have done my own taxes since I was 22. I have a binder in my closet with every recorded deed, every loan payoff, every insurance declaration page, going back to the year Daniel and I were married. I am not a woman who is easily moved off her own paperwork. I did not correct her because I loved my husband, and because Daniel had spent the first 40 years of his life learning how to make his mother feel important, and I did not yet understand that her feeling important and my being erased were starting to become the same project. That was red flag number 1. I want you to remember it, because the people who do this do not start with the petition. They start with the language. They start by changing the words around you until your name does not fit in the sentences anymore. The second one came in the summer of 2022, and it came from Robert. I keep a quarterly habit every March, June, September, and December of running a basic title check on each of our 4 rentals. It takes me about 40 minutes on a Saturday morning. I sit at the kitchen table with my second cup of coffee, and I log into the county records portal, and I pull each one up to make sure nothing has changed. No new liens, no transfers, no clouds I do not know about. It is bookkeeper paranoia. I have done it for 16 years and never found anything, until that June. I was looking at the Holston Avenue file, and I noticed a small administrative note at the bottom of the property tax correspondence record. Mailing address updated, February of 2022. The new mailing address was Robert and Patricia's home address on Cherokee Boulevard. I sat there for a long time. I did not get up to get more coffee. I did not call Daniel into the room. I just looked at the screen, and I tried to remember if I had asked Robert to handle a tax notice for me. I had not. I had not asked anyone to do anything with the mailing address. The mailing address had been our home address, the one I had set in 2007 when I took over the books, for 15 years. Robert had called the property tax office on his own, without telling me, without telling Daniel, and asked them to redirect the correspondence to him. That is the kind of thing that does not look like anything if you say it out loud at a family dinner. He just wanted to help. He has always handled the property side. He is old school. Pick your phrase. The phrase does not matter. What matters is that the property tax office, the only outside party with a regular paper trail to those 4 rentals, had stopped sending letters to the co-owner whose name had been on the deeds since 2003. And the person who had done it had not mentioned it once. Not at Christmas. Not at the 4th of July cookout, where he stood next to me at the grill and asked how the tenants on Lakeside were doing. Not once. I did not raise my voice at dinner. I saved the screenshot. I also did something I had never done before in 16 years of running those books. I called the property tax office myself on a Tuesday morning, and I asked the woman who answered, very politely, what their procedure was for a mailing address change. She told me. She said any party listed on the deed could request a change by phone if they could verify the property address and the owner names. No notarized form, no second signature requirement, just a phone call. I thanked her. I hung up. I sat at my desk for a long minute, and I thought about how easy it had been for Robert to do, and how easy it would be for him to do again on any of the other 3 properties if I was not watching. I logged in the next morning, walked the mailing address back to our home, and printed the change confirmation. I put it in the binder. I did not tell Daniel. I want to be honest with you about that too. I did not tell my husband because I did not yet know what I was looking at. I knew it was a flag. I did not yet know it was a pattern. That was red flag number 2. The third one is the one that broke open the rest of the story, and the one Daniel told me about himself the night it happened, sitting on the edge of our bed with his shoes still on. It was a Tuesday in early September of 2023. Daniel had taken a phone call from his father in the driveway, the way he always did when Robert called during work hours, because Robert always wanted to talk about money, and Daniel did not want me to feel like he was hiding the conversation. He came inside about 15 minutes later, and he sat down on the bed next to where I was folding laundry, and he did not say anything for a minute. Then he said, "Dad asked me something strange today." I put down the pillowcase I was folding. "He asked me," Daniel said, "if you ever actually signed anything on the properties." He said it just like that. He said, "Did Anna ever actually sign anything?" I looked at my husband who had stood next to me in 2003 at our kitchen table and read each line of the deed paperwork out loud before I signed it. My husband, who had been in the county clerk's office the morning the deeds were recorded. My husband, whose father knew, who had to know, who had been in the room. "What did you say?" I asked. I told him of course you signed. I told him I was there. I told him I had handed him the copies myself. And what did he say? Daniel pressed his hands together between his knees. He said okay. He said he just wanted to make sure he was remembering it right. And then he asked me about the volunteers game. I stood up. I walked into the hall closet. I pulled out the binder. I sat on the bed next to my husband, and I opened it to the Lakeside Drive section, and I put my finger on my own signature, dated March 17th, 2003, witnessed by a notary named Eileen Carter, whose stamp was still legible. "I signed everything," I said. "Daniel. Every page." "I know, Anna." "Why is he asking?" He shook his head. He did not know. Or maybe he knew, and could not yet say. I have thought about that night 100 times, and I do not think Daniel was lying to me. I think Daniel was a son who had spent his whole life being asked small, strange questions by his father, and had spent his whole life giving small, clean answers, and had never put together what those questions were for. That was red flag number 3. I lay awake that night with my hand on Daniel's back, listening to him breathe, and I thought about a conversation I had heard between Patricia and her sister at a family reunion 3 summers earlier. They had been sitting on the back porch of Robert and Patricia's house with sweet tea, and I had been inside in the kitchen refilling a pitcher. The kitchen window was open. I had not meant to listen. I just had. Patricia had said, very quietly, "Daniel is a good son. He has always been a good son. I just worry sometimes about what happens after Robert and I are gone, with everything we have, with the houses." Her sister had said, "He has a wife, Pat," and Patricia had said, "I know that, I know that." That was all. 6 words. I know that, I know that. I had walked back into the living room with the pitcher, and I had not told anyone what I had heard, because at the time it had not seemed like anything. A mother fretting about her grown son. A mother who said she had always wanted a daughter, and then said, on a back porch, that she knew her son had a wife. 3 years later, in our bedroom at 1 a.m, I understood that sentence had not been a worry. It had been a plan. The text was sent at 11 p.m. The deed was dated 3 years earlier. Let me explain that. After Daniel told me about the phone call, I went into my home office and I did not come out for 2 hours. I pulled up the email account I use for property correspondence. I searched for the word deed. I searched for the word title. I searched for Robert's name. And I found a message I had almost forgotten about, sent to Daniel by his father in November of 2020 at 11 o'clock at night. It said, "Son, we should talk soon about the long-term plan for the rentals. There are some things I want to walk you through. Just you and me. Patricia agrees." Daniel had forwarded it to me the next morning with a note that said, "Probably wants to talk about the roof on the Holston duplex. We'll let you know." We had laughed about it. I had filed the email and forgotten it. We had bought a new water heater for one of the units that week, and the roof conversation never happened. It happened, of course. It just did not happen with me in the room. I sat at my desk that September night, and I read that email 3 times, and I understood, finally, what Robert had been doing in the quiet. He had been building a case to his son, not loudly, not all at once, just a phone call here, a tax mailing address there, a Robert's Properties at every Sunday dinner, a late-night email asking for a private talk. Patricia agrees. Patricia always agreed because Patricia had been the one making the Bloodline list in her head since the day Daniel brought me home. Some doors do not close loudly. They close legally. But before they close, they get pushed at, gently, for years. I did not tell Daniel what I had found in the email folder. Not that night. He had enough on his shoulders. I closed the laptop. I went to bed. I lay next to my husband, and I listened to him breathe, and I made one decision. The next time something happened, I would not wait. The next time they reached for something with my name on it, I would not let it sit on the kitchen table for an hour while I made coffee. The next time came 3 weeks later. Daniel called me from his parents' driveway on a Sunday afternoon in October. He had gone over alone because I had a quarterly client closeout and could not leave the office. He told me later he had not even gotten to the second cup of coffee before his mother stood up from the recliner and walked to the den and came back with a manila envelope and a face I knew well. The face she wore when she was about to do me a favor I had not asked for. She put the envelope on the coffee table. She pulled out a piece of paper that had been folded in thirds. The edges were soft with age. The ink was Robert's. The date in the corner was August of 1998. She read it out loud to her son. She read the part about how the Knoxville rentals were to remain within the Hollis bloodline. She read the part where Robert had written in a careful hand that this was his intention for the long-term stewardship of the properties he had bought with his own labor. She read the part where he had signed his own name at the bottom, with no notary, no witness, no county stamp. And then she looked at Daniel and she said very calmly, "We are going to use this to ask the court to remove Anna from the titles. We think it is the right thing for the family. We think you will see that too." Daniel called me from the driveway. He was sitting in his truck with the engine off. He told me what they had said. He told me his father had nodded along with his mother's words without speaking. He told me he had taken the note. He told me he was scared, Anna, and I could hear in his voice that he meant it. I told him to come home. I want to tell you what I felt sitting at that table with the phone still warm in my hand, because I think a lot of women watching this know that feeling already. It was not rage. Rage is loud, and what I felt was very quiet. It was the feeling of a door at the back of a long hallway, swinging open, and seeing finally the room they had been preparing for me at the end of it. It was not surprise either. I had seen the room being built. The Roberts Properties Sundays, the tax office mailing address, the 11 o'clock email, the September phone call. They had told me, in pieces, for 2 years, what they intended to do. I just had not believed they would put it on a piece of paper from 1998 and call it law. Daniel came home about 30 minutes later. He did not take off his jacket. He set the note on the kitchen table between the salt shaker and my coffee cup, and he said the sentence I told you about at the start of this story. Anna, they said this is enough to take your name off the deeds. I read the paper. I held it under the light over the table the way I hold every document I do not yet trust. I looked at the date. I looked at the signature. I looked at the absence of any second name, no notary stamp, no witness line, no recording number from any county clerk, no reference to a trust, no legal language. Just a man's handwriting on a piece of stationery from 5 years before our wedding expressing a wish. A wish is not a deed. A wish is not a contract. A wish written down and kept in a drawer for 25 years is still a wish. I told Daniel that. I told him calmly, while he sat in the chair across from me with his hands flat on the table. I told him that whatever this paper was, it was not a court order, and it was not a recorded restriction, and it was not anything that could touch my name on a deed that had been on the public record for 20 years. He nodded. He believed me, I think. He also still looked frightened, because the people who had handed him that paper were the 2 people who had raised him, and they had said the words, "We are going to ask the court." And a son who has spent his life making his parents feel important does not stop feeling that fear in one evening. I did not push him. I asked him one thing. "Daniel, do you agree with them?" He looked up at me. His eyes were red around the edges. "No," he said, "I do not. I want you to know that. I am scared, Anna. I am not on their side. I am on ours." I put my hand on top of his. I told him I believed him. I told him we were going to be all right. I told him I needed him to do one thing for me, and one thing only, and then we would not talk about it again until the morning. "Do not call them tonight," I said. "Do not text them. Do not answer if they call. We are done with this for today. We will deal with it tomorrow." He nodded. He turned off his phone. He went and made us dinner, because that is what Daniel does when he is afraid. He cooks. He made the chicken with the lemon and the rice we had been having on Tuesdays since the kids were in middle school, and we ate it at the kitchen table with the 1998 note still folded under my deed binder on the hall closet shelf, and we did not say one more word about his parents that night. I slept badly. I am not going to lie to you. I slept badly. I went to bed at 10:30. I lay there. I got up at midnight and drank a glass of water at the kitchen sink in the dark. I went back to bed. I lay there. I got up again at 1:15 and walked through the house with my bare feet on the cold wood floors, and I stood in the front room and I looked at every wall and every framed photograph and every piece of furniture, and I thought, this is mine. This is mine because I married a man who chose me. This is mine because I have paid the bills on it for 23 years. This is mine because the law of the state of Tennessee says it is mine. And no piece of paper from a year I had not yet met any of these people in is going to take it. At 4 a.m, I got up and I went into my office and I made a list. I am a bookkeeper. I make lists. The list had 3 columns: what I knew, what I had on paper, what I needed from someone who was not me. In the first column, I wrote everything I had seen for 2 years. The Roberts Properties Sundays, the tax mailing address change, the September phone call, the 2020 email, Patricia's hand on the manila envelope, the Bloodline sentence. In the second column, I wrote what I could prove. The recorded deeds from March 2003, with my name on every one, witnessed by a notary, filed with the Knox County Register of Deeds. 16 years of property tax checks from an account with my name on the signature card. 16 years of insurance declaration pages naming me as a co-insured. 16 years of bookkeeping records for 4 rentals that I had managed myself. A handwritten note from 1998 with 1 signature and no county stamp. In the third column, I wrote one name, Marjorie Wells, my real estate attorney for 11 years. The woman who had walked me through 2 refinancings and 1 tenant eviction, and never once made me feel small for asking a question. I called her office at 8 o'clock sharp. Her assistant said she could see me at 9:45. I drove to her office on Gay Street with the 1998 note in a manila folder on the passenger seat, and my deed binder on the seat behind it, and a cup of coffee I did not drink. I parked in the same garage I always parked in. I took the elevator to the 4th floor. I sat in the same chair across from Marjorie's desk that I had sat in for every appointment I had ever had with her. She read the note. Once. Slowly. She turned it over to look at the back. There was nothing on the back. She set it down on her desk blotter. "Anna," she said, "walk me through who has seen this." I told her. I told her everything. I told her about the spiral notebook in my desk drawer. I told her about the Thanksgiving toast. I told her about the tax office address change and the moment I had found it and the screenshot I had saved. I told her about the September phone call from Robert to Daniel and the 2020 email Daniel had forwarded me without knowing what it was. I told her about Patricia and the envelope, about Robert sitting quietly while his wife read it out loud, about Daniel in the driveway, about the words, "We are going to ask the court." She let me finish. She did not interrupt. When I was done, she leaned back in her chair and she said one of the things I have ever been most grateful to hear another person say to me in my adult life. "This paper has no legal force over your titles. None. It predates your marriage by 5 years. It was never recorded with any county clerk. It is not part of any trust. It is not part of any deed restriction. It is, at best, a private letter of intent from one man to himself, written before the property in question was even held jointly with anyone else. It cannot remove your name from anything." I sat there for a moment. I did not cry. I had cried already, at 4 a.m, in my office while writing the list. I had cried before driving over. I was done crying. I just sat there and let her words rest on the desk between us, the way I had let the note rest on my kitchen table the night before. "What do we do?" I asked. She told me. She walked me through it in the careful, slow voice she uses when she does not want a client to miss a single piece of what she is saying. She explained that under Tennessee law, recorded deeds carry the presumption of validity, that the burden of proof to challenge a recorded title sits with the challenger, and that a private handwritten note from 1998, with no recording number, no second signature, and no incorporation into any trust or restriction, did not come close to meeting that burden. She told me that even if Patricia and Robert filed something, the filing itself would not change the titles. The titles could only be changed by a court order, and no court was going to issue one based on what was sitting on her desk blotter. Then she said we would send a formal written response to Patricia and Robert's attorney, dismissing any petition they intended to file in its entirety. She said the letter would state clearly that the 1998 document had no legal standing and could not be used to challenge a recorded deed, that any further action along these lines would be vigorously defended, and that a claim for attorney's fees would be considered if they proceeded. She said she would have the letter drafted before she left her office that evening. She asked me how I wanted it sent. I told her certified mail with return receipt to whichever attorney they had retained. She asked me one more question before I left. "Anna, how is Daniel?" I told her the truth. I told her my husband had brought me the paper himself. I told her he had said out loud at our kitchen table that he was on our side. I told her he was frightened, but he was not lying. She nodded. "That matters," she said. "Hold on to that." I drove home. I told Daniel what Marjorie had said. I watched his shoulders come down for the first time in 2 days. He picked up the 1998 note from the kitchen table, folded it the way it had been folded when his mother handed it to him, and slid it back into the manila folder. "What do we do until the letter goes out?" he asked. "Nothing," I said. "We do nothing. We do not call them. We do not text them. We do not explain ourselves. The paperwork is going to do all the talking." He nodded. He put the folder in the drawer of the hall table by the front door. The 1998 note. The note Patricia had carried around the family for a quarter of a century, like a loaded chamber. The note Robert had written in his own hand 5 years before. He watched me sign my name to 4 deeds in his county. We put it in a drawer in our own home, and we left it there, and we went to bed. Patricia called him the next morning, 3 times. Daniel did not answer. She called me. I did not answer. She left a voicemail that I deleted without listening to all the way through. I caught the word family, and the word reasonable, and the word Daniel before I tapped the trash icon. I do not need to be told what is reasonable by a woman who carried a 1998 note in a manila envelope for 25 years. The letter from Marjorie went out by certified mail that afternoon. It arrived at Patricia and Robert's attorney's office the next morning. I know this because the return receipt was scanned and emailed to me by Marjorie's assistant at 10:13. I want to tell you about the 3 days after that because I think a lot of people imagine that the moment you send the letter, the noise stops. The noise did not stop right away. The noise got, if anything, louder for about 72 hours. Patricia called 4 more times. Robert sent Daniel a long text message that I read once over my husband's shoulder and have not thought about since. The text said something about ingratitude, and about how Daniel did not understand what his father had built, and about how, if Daniel was a man, he would be sitting at the kitchen table on Cherokee Boulevard, talking this out instead of letting a lawyer speak for him. Daniel set the phone down on the counter. He did not respond. He looked at me, and he said, "I am a man. I am sitting at this kitchen table. The lawyer is speaking for both of us." I do not think I have ever loved my husband more than I did in that sentence. The call from the other side came on the 4th day. It came to Marjorie's office. It was Patricia and Robert's attorney, a man I will not name here, because he was, by every account, a professional doing a difficult job for difficult clients. He had read Marjorie's letter. He had reviewed the documents she had attached. He had pulled the recorded deeds himself, and he was calling, he said, to inform her that he had advised his clients that the 1998 note was unenforceable, that no petition to remove me from the titles would be filed, and that if his clients pursued the matter further on their own, they would expose themselves to a claim for attorney's fees. Marjorie called me at 4:10 that afternoon. I was at my kitchen table. I had my coffee cup in my hand. I had been doing a tenant ledger reconciliation when the phone rang. "Anna," she said, "their attorney called. The petition is closed. They are not filing." I sat there. I did not say anything for a moment. I looked out the window over the sink at the dogwood in the side yard. It was almost bare. The leaves had gone red and dropped, and the squirrels were running on the fence. "Thank you," I said. "You did not need much from me," she said. "You had the paper. You had the patience. I just put it on letterhead." I told Daniel that night, at the same kitchen table where the 1998 note had spent its one and only evening. I told him calmly. I told him without victory in my voice, because there was no victory. There was only the end of something that should never have been started. He cried. I want to be honest with you about that. My husband cried at our kitchen table because the people who had raised him had been told in writing by a man they had paid to be on their side that what they had tried to do to his wife was not a thing they could do. He cried for himself, and he cried for his mother, and he cried, I think, for the version of his father he had believed in for 53 years. I let him. I did not say anything for a long time. I just sat across from him with my hand on top of his, the way I had the night he brought the note home. When he could talk again, he said one thing. "I am sorry, Anna. I am so sorry." I shook my head. "You did not do this," I said. "You brought it to me. You stayed on my side. That is not the part you apologize for. That is the part you stand on for the rest of your life." We did not talk to Patricia and Robert for a long time after that. Not at Thanksgiving. Not at Christmas. I did not slam any doors. I did not write any speeches. I let Daniel decide what he was going to do with his own parents on his own time, because that was his to decide and not mine. He chose distance. He chose it without my asking. He chose it the way a grown man finally chooses, when he has seen the whole shape of something and he no longer wants to keep walking back into the same room. Robert called him in February. Daniel answered. They talked for 11 minutes. I do not know what was said. Daniel came into the kitchen afterward and said, "He apologized. He did not apologize well, but he apologized." I nodded. I made dinner. We have not seen them since. I still run the quarterly title checks. I still sit at our kitchen table with my second cup of coffee on the first Saturday of March, June, September, and December, and I log into the county records portal, and I pull up each one of our 4 rentals, and I look at my name on every line. It is still there. It will be there for as long as the law in Knox County, Tennessee, says it is there, which is to say, for the rest of my life, and probably longer. The 1998 note is in a file folder in my home office now, behind a tab that just says October 2023. I did not throw it away. I am a bookkeeper. I keep paper. I keep paper because paper is what tells you the truth when people decide to forget. That folder is not a trophy. It is a receipt. It is the receipt for the quiet years they spent calling it Roberts, and the tax office address change, and the 11 o'clock email, and the September phone call, and the manila envelope on the coffee table. I look at the deed binder on the lower shelf of my hall closet every once in a while. I do not open it. I just look at the spine. It is a black 3-ring binder with a piece of masking tape on the front that says Knoxville Rentals, 2003 onward, in my own handwriting. The handwriting on the tape is 23 years old. The handwriting on the 1998 note is 28. The county recorded mine. The county did not record his. That is the whole story, really. They had a wish. I had a deed. One of those things is enforceable in Knox County, and one of them is not. If you take anything away from what I have just told you, let it be this. You do not have to argue with people who have decided you do not belong on a piece of paper that already has your name on it. You do not have to raise your voice at a coffee table. You do not have to defend yourself across a Thanksgiving turkey. The county clerk has already defended you. The notary stamp has already defended you. Your own signature, in your own ink, from your own hand, 20 years ago, has already defended you. You just have to be calm enough not to set fire to your own evidence. Save the message. Save the screenshot. Save the receipt. Keep the binder. Run the title check. Do not assume the people who hugged you at the punch bowl will still want your name on the deed 20 years later. Some of them will. Some of them will not. The paperwork does not care which. I love my husband. I am still married to my husband. I will be married to my husband, God willing, for as many more years as I get. He stood at our kitchen table in October of 2023, and he chose me, and I chose him back, and the people who had tried to put a wedge between us went home with a letter from my attorney instead of a court date. We had dinner on the back deck last Sunday. The Holston Avenue tenants paid their rent on the 1st. The Lakeside Drive duplex has a new dishwasher. The dogwood is in bloom again. The home deed binder is on the shelf. My name is on every line. That is what peace at home looks like when you have done the work to protect it. And if stories like this remind you that boundaries are not cruelty, subscribe to my channel for more stories, because sometimes protecting your peace is the strongest thing you can do.